What's up, horror fans? Pete is back for the Lasser cast. I am here with my good friend, Dr. Zayas God. I've been MIA for over a month, but Danny has been holding down the channel. Whoa. Oh, shit. I got it streaming on YouTube. There we go. Woo. It was like echoing for a second. Anyway, Danny, we're back. We wouldn't be back without technical problems anyway, right?
Never. Now I know we're back.
Yeah. How you doing, man? You good?
I'm very good. I've basically just been for about the last couple of weeks just been throwing up as many shorts as I can. I've been trying to watch as many vampire and Dracula movies as I can. And that's what kind of brought us to the movie we're going to be talking about today. And yeah, I'm glad to have you back. And yeah, the channel is alive, so let's go.
Yes, we are doing a live discussion on Shadow of the Vampire, which came out in 2000. And watching this movie, Danny, it really does feel like it's from a different time, doesn't it?
It feels like it's from way before 2000 in parts. I mean, the movie does a lot of things that I love. And the things that I love the most are when you see the making of Nosferatu. So you're watching a movie from 2000, which still I cannot get over. It is going to be in a few days. 2000 is going to be 25 years ago, because to me it's like 10 years ago.
Right,
Uh, we graduated high school in 2000.
right.
Yeah, so yeah, and it you're watching a movie that came out in 2000, and you're watching them do effects to make you think you're looking at the making of a movie in 1922. So in many ways this movie feels 25 years old, and then there are parts of this movie that feel like they are 100 years old. And I think that adds to the movie.
Oh,
um
absolutely.
yeah, it's such a wild movie because I feel like it's something that uh, they've been doing a lot more of in modern films, where
Mhm.
you kind of take a classic and then you give it this like wildly original spin. And in 2000, Shadow of the Vampire comes out, and they basically the movie is, hey, all those like legends about Max Shrek being a real vampire? What
Yeah,
if we did that?
right,
What
right,
if, and it totally feels like something that would come out today. Like
right.
and and I think that because of that, it ages very well.
Absolutely. It ages well, but then the complete inverse is that like they really wouldn't make a movie like this today either. Like maybe it would be streaming on like Netflix or Max or something. But it's so weird because the director I've never heard of before this movie, E. Elias Merhige or whatever.
I think it's pronounced Mirage.
Okay,
I looked it up and it says it sounds like marriage.
okay. E. Elias Marriage. Okay. And I'm just looking into his credits, and really the only thing that really stands out is that he directed like two Marilyn Manson music videos.
So he did this movie Begotten in the late 80s, and that was like one of those unheard, like, you can't find a copy. It was deemed to be like, it's like an experimental movie that has like some insane imagery in it that is like completely confusing but also like haunting to look at. And I
Okay.
swear, if you Google Begotten and you see some of like the clips from it, you will have seen them before in
Hmm.
like um but yeah, I was a little shocked when I was looking the movie up, and I actually remembered his name from Begotten. And then I'm like, oh, he's the guy who did Shadow of the Vampire. Oh, what else has he done? And then I'm like, oh, in 25 years, he's done two short films and two music videos.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, sometimes you look back, sometimes we review these movies and we find that like, oh my God, like the director of this movie from 30 years ago went on to do all these classics, and then you find a movie that was nominated for multiple Academy Awards,
Right.
two Oscar nominations for this movie, makeup, and of course Willem Dafoe for Best Supporting Actor.
Right.
And the director went on to effectively not make any more films, and you're like, that's just weird. And you start to think, I don't know, maybe there's something where he just didn't want to be in the film industry anymore. Maybe he's one of these music video guys that, you know, he does a lot of work, but it's not, you know, the credit where he doesn't get credited like on IMDb or something.
Yeah.
But it very interesting because I just rewatched this movie the other day, probably for the first time in 20 plus years.
Oh wow.
And all I could think of was, yeah, I would love to see another movie from this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a solid movie. You mentioned how it was nominated for multiple Oscars. Stephen Katz is the screenwriter, and even his credits are a little suspect too, because there really wasn't anything else that really stood out like this movie. And he ended up winning a Stoker Award, which is kind of a prestigious award for horror writers. He won for Best Screenwriter. And it's funny because, like, yeah, Willem Dafoe was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And then, like you said, the movie was nominated for Best Makeup, but then ended up losing out to The Grinch, which I remember that from that time too.
Wow.
Look at this. We got somebody commenting over here. We got Matt Hicks. Danny's audio is not good. He kind of sounds like a robot. It's okay. I understand that. I mean, Danny, if you actually want to unplug your earbuds and plug them back in, you can. And you guys get to listen to my annoying voice. Oh, Matt Hicks says, headed into work. I'll have to listen later. Just want to say hi. Well, Matt, it's real freaking early. But yeah, we're lucky. We're in education. We're not going to work today.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, God, it's even more robotic.
Is it?
Oh, wait, say something again.
Hi, how are you?
I think that's about as good as we're going to get.
Yeah,
so let's keep it going. Don't worry about the audio for now. That's the best we can do.
I promise I'm human. My beer belly is not robotic at all. I assure you that.
There you go.
But I appreciate anybody who's watching live. And yes, I'm sorry for the robotic voice. I just rewatched The Grinch also. Athena's doing an advent calendar of Christmas movies, and I remember not really loving that movie, and then like watching it again, I'm like, yeah, I don't love this movie, but the kind of hard to argue with the makeup for that. Although I would still say Dafoe probably should have gotten a look. Willem Dafoe is one of those actors who's long overdue for an Oscar. And I think that it's actually perfect. You have Nosferatu behind us because Willem Dafoe is in Nosferatu. I think he plays the Van Helsing role, which is not called Van Helsing in Nosferatu.
Right.
Yeah, Nosferatu. That's one of the things that I loved about Shadow the Vampire was, as a history person, they get into the whole Bram Stoker's widow isn't going to sell us the book, so screw her. Let's just make a vampire movie and change all the names. And what's weird is, like, since I've been going through these vampire movies, Dracula movies, I did a review of Fright Night for the channel. I did a review of a short review of Shadow the Vampire. And I did one for Bram Stoker's Dracula, a movie that I think we both like. And then I did one for Werner Herzog's Nosferatu the Vampire from 1979. And the funny thing about that movie is that it's a remake of Nosferatu, but Orlok is Dracula. He's called Dracula, and Van Helsing is in the movie, and they named the characters after the Stoker characters, but it's clearly Nosferatu. It's called Nosferatu, and so I'm all kind of mixed up. But in Shadow of the Vampire, it is obviously they are doing the 1922. So Jonathan Harker is Hutter. I think Lucy is the main. No, Greta. Greta
Greta.
is the main girl instead of Lucy or Mina. Van Helsing has a different name as well, and it was German instead of. They're going to Germany instead of London.
Right,
So
exactly. Yeah, yeah. I've never seen the original Nosferatu, but I know, I mean, there's those iconic shots from it that they duplicate or replicate, I'm sorry, in this film. And I think they do a fantastic job of making it look like Willem Dafoe is Max Schreck, from that
yeah,
movie.
even Eddie Izzard looks just like the actor in the original Nosferatu. Like that was even wild to see. Who Eddie Izzard is playing Hutter Harker, and he looks exactly like the guy from 1922.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really when they get into the filming of Nosferatu in Shadow of the Vampire, that those are my favorite parts of the movie, other than just freaking Defoe's performance, which it's really funny. Like I haven't seen this movie in probably 20 years, but his line of "I'll eat her later" was
Yes,
one of
yes,
those things that like my friends and I would repeat over and over again, just
yes.
randomly. It would like come up in like weird conversation.
Yeah.
Like we'd be like at the mall and be like, "Oh wow, that girl's hot. Yeah, I'll eat her later." Like, oh,
Right.
it's yeah. Yeah, so Willem Dafoe gave us like some good creep factor dialogue for the pursuing decades.
Yeah, well, Willem Dafoe definitely needs to be talked about because right now I would say he's kind of like a movie darling, the way that Keanu Reeves is, where there's a lot of like young people, like younger than us, that know of him and know memes of him, and they really like him. And I think it's especially because his portrayal of Norman Osborn in like the Spider-Man films, right? And I think
Yeah,
they'll quote things from that. And he's kind of famous just for his kind of crazy face, right? I think that when this movie was made in 2000, he was known to film fans like us, but I don't think he was like as big as he is now. And he's just an amazing, amazing actor. And obviously, people talk about Willem Dafoe's face and how expressive it is and how unique it is. I mean, this role is like a perfect, perfect role for him.
yeah. Oh, 100%. I think the thing with Defoe is he is so eclectic in the choices he makes that
Hmm.
he ends up appealing to just where like some actors are just classically trained actors who do uh you know uh what's the phrase I'm looking for, they do those like prestige movies, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Defoe will do he'll do anything, and I don't mean that in like the like Al Pacino doing Jack and Jill and singing Dunkachino, but like he like you said, like this movie, I was reading, this is the movie that I think got him Green Goblin.
okay,
and,
perfect.
and so like Green Goblin, if like you were our age and you didn't grow up knowing, watching film, and you didn't know who Willem Dafoe was, then Green Goblin opened him up to a generation, right?
Right,
Horror fans, you get this movie. One of the most important movies of my late teenage, early 20s years was the Boondock Saints.
right.
Um,
That's
that was I mean, I have friends with Boondock Saints tattoos, and he is amazing in that movie.
right.
And I first saw Defoe in Platoon. I mean, one of my favorite
Wow.
movies of all time. He
Yeah,
has
yeah.
probably one of the most iconic death scenes in movie history. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Platoon as well. I mean, that was 1986. Um, but this is a guy who did Streets of Fire as like a leather-clad badass biker, and he's just yeah, and he has one of those faces,
Hmm.
and it he's a guy who has been fan cast as the Joker for what, decades.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So like I always compare him kind of to as like the American Gary Oldman. where these are two guys who, whatever role they're in, it could be the smallest role in the movie, they could be the sixth or seventh credit, and they're just going to steal that scene, and you're going to remember that character in that scene in that movie for years. And I think in this movie, he finally got a chance to just literally chew scenery as, you know, this iconic character. But he's playing obviously a fictionalized version of the character, you know, the playing up to the Max Schreck as an actual vampire legend.
Yes, yes. Well, when you're saying chewing the actual scenery, you know, he chews on a few people in this movie. It's so funny because I think the movie was probably rated R when it came out. It's not very graphic. And I think that's mainly because of probably two things. Probably like the style in which they wanted to tell their story. I don't think they wanted to tell like a sort of like a overly gory, sensational horror movie. They wanted to kind of make it seem like almost like it was from the time that it was made. And then the other thing is probably just to save money, right? They couldn't do too many elaborate special effects. Like even spoilers, when he dies at the end, it's very similar to when Count Orlok dies in the Nosferatu, where it's just like the light kind of shines on him and he disappears. They make the film like disintegrate at that point,
which is a
like,
great touch. Great,
right,
touch.
right. And there's a great effect where it's like there's a noise and you're looking at John Malkovich's eyes as this is happening. It's very unsettling, but like a lot of the killing and the biting and stuff, it's very like subtle, you know. There's vampire marks on a woman's neck at the end. There's like he attacks a person, but it's so much is told in the way that he moves and the noises that are made versus like any kind of like gushing blood or anything sensational. It's very, very different from the adaptation of Dracula, which was, years prior, the Francis Ford Coppola version that we mentioned,
Oh my God. I rewatched that and I did a short for that. And that is easily one of the most wildly entertaining movies. Although I consistently say it's entertaining for all the right and wrong reasons at the same time.
Right.
And I will say, having watched the trailer for Eggers' Nosferatu, it almost feels like they are doing as much of a version of Francis Ford Coppola's Dracula
absolutely
than they are a 1922 or 1979 version of Nosferatu. I've heard from a few different people who have seen it in advanced screenings that it's really good, but it's also really horny. And I'm like, yeah, well, Francis Ford Coppola's movie was fucking horny as hell.
Yep.
I mean, and Willem Dafoe is pretty horny in this movie too. He's like, he wants Greta, and he's the entire movie. He's not hiding that.
No. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of interesting overlap, right? Because we're reviewing this movie at Christmas time. Nosferatu is about to come out at Christmas time. I got a little Santa hat on Count Orlok for our thumbnail that just went live. But then we keep talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula. You just literally compared Willem Dafoe to Gary Oldman. Gary Oldman is Dracula in that movie. And then when I'm watching this movie, they have to replace the cameraman at one point, and fucking Cary Elves walks in. I'm like, what the hell? He's literally in fucking Dracula.
Yeah, he's Lucy's fiance in Bram Stoker's Dracula. One of the actors whose British accent actually makes sense.
Right.
But yeah, no, it really does feel like the world of Nosferatu / Dracula is kind of incestuous in that way.
Yes.
Where you have Dafoe, who is obviously Orlok here, and he's in Robert Eggers' movie. Cary Elwes shows up in both movies. Here's the funny thing. I made that comparison of Willem Dafoe to Gary Oldman without even realizing that Gary Oldman was not even making the Dracula to Dracula comparison.
Right.
But it's just they, and I thought Cary Elwes was really funny in this. He
absolutely.
I love how everyone in this movie, and again, the movie takes place in 1922 or 1921, so it's like everybody is drunk or high on opium, or it's just like he like flies a plane, lands the plane, and he's like, hey, like he's obviously lit up, and it's great. And
Yeah, he has some kind of line where he says, "Are you loaded?" And he's talking about the film and the camera, and then the guy's like, "Yes." He's like, "Yeah, so am I." Like, but as if
yeah,
he's drunk. I love that. Yeah. No,
also, Shadow of the Vampire has one of the main characters is Udo Kier, who Udo
Blade.
Kier has played Dracula, I believe, more than once back in the
Okay.
70s.
Okay.
He was also in Flesh for Frankenstein. He was in the Andy Warhol series, the Andy Warhol Dracula, Andy Warhol Frankenstein.
Oh,
So
okay.
he has a very long history with these monsters, with Dracula. So that was another clever casting choice by Elias Mirage,
Yeah.
and it's just like one of those things that like it. I feel like those are like they're great castings because obviously he fits the role, especially being European, but also it's like a nod to horror fans that like, oh, you know this guy, he's played Dracula before, and now he's going to be in this vampire movie.
Yeah.
So
I've seen him in other things since, but I think the very first time I ever saw him was in Blade, and I think Blade came out in '98, I
eight,
believe.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So I mean, people would recognize him from that when they watch this as well. So let's talk about some of the things that kind of stand out in the actual story of this movie. One of the things that stood out right away, I thought there was actually something wrong with my Amazon player, was like the way the movie opens. Like it's very quiet and the credits take a very long time. Did you notice that?
yeah. I kept looking in the background, and I'm like trying to put together what is going on. It's like it feels like I'm watching like a puzzle come together,
Yeah.
and I I did. I'm sitting there and I genuinely was thinking the same thing. Like, wow, this is the longest set of opening credits that
Right.
I think I've ever seen, and it's obviously not. But it's just it's a very strange. I guess it's like a somber, quiet opening to this movie. You know,
Yeah.
I guess to establish the setting.
Did the original Nosferatu have a opening like that? Was it like that?
I that I'm actually gonna rewatch Nosferatu later today. I haven't done the original in this like run of vampire Dracula movies that I've watched. So I like you, I've seen it before. I've seen the images are burned into your mind.
Right.
You know, the way Max Shrek looks is burned into your mind, but I haven't actually rewatched the whole movie. It's streaming for free on several platforms. I think it's on Tubi. I think it might even be on Shutter. I just have to go find it and watch it.
Nice, nice. Yeah. So I mean, like that all of a sudden just I was like, am I watching the right movie? Then it has like an opening crawl where it like, has like a little screen card that tells you what's going on. They explain the backstory about like not getting the rights to Bram Stoker's Dracula. And then pretty early on, they show John Malkovich like he goes to some kind of like sex club or something like right away, right? It's like it's funny because you always think of that time as so like chaste and pure, but this movie, it's like you said, where they're just like doing drugs and all kinds of kinky
Yeah,
stuff too.
it looked like he was going to like an opium den, but then
Okay.
I IMDb said that there was a subplot that they filmed and I think cut from the movie where Malkovich has a uh, who, by the way, plays F.W. Murnau, the director, and who's excellent in this movie because at any given moment, John Malkovich could have put on the makeup and been Orlok,
Right.
100%.
Right.
But he apparently there was a subplot that was cut where he had like a lover, and I'm not sure if I read it correctly, but he might have been like an androgynous lover. So they really wanted to like go there in the year 2000, and I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that was either cut out or just not. Maybe it was filmed and cut, or not, or scripted and then cut out. So I think that's what that was originally there to establish, or just establish him as somebody who has vices that are. And one of the things that I enjoy about Malkovich's performance is, I mean, this is a guy who is making a movie and he does not care about literally anything else. He has literally made a deal with the devil
Right.
to get this movie made.
Right.
He's the only one who is in on the Max Shrek is not playing a character. And he's like, oh, yeah, you can literally have my leading lady at the end if you act and be this character for me.
Yes.
And it's just great. And I love the way the movie ends, where he basically allows two of his compadres to get brutally killed. He
Yep.
allows Greta to be bitten, and it's all good because it's all in the name of making that movie. And he has a quote that he tells Orlok at the end, Shrek at the end, that apparently is a quote that the real F.W. Murnau said to Alfred Hitchcock, a young Alfred Hitchcock, when Hitchcock was in Europe. Hitchcock
Okay.
started making movies in the late 30s. So,
okay.
Apparently Hitchcock was in Europe probably right before World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And he met F.W. Murnau, and F.W. Murnau has that line that he says to Shrek, which is, it's like, if it's not on film, it doesn't exist.
Yes,
Or
yes.
if it's not being shot, it's not real. It's like, so
Right.
that was a line that apparently the real Murnau told to a young Alfred Hitchcock,
That is
which
so
makes
cool.
that line even cooler than it is in the movie.
Right. He says it at the very, very end after
Yeah.
he's feasted on Greta. Yeah. It's like from a different time, because like they're wearing lab coats, and he refers to himself as a scientist multiple times, or like members of the crew
Air
are scientists.
Doctor.
Right. And then not only that, but the filming itself is so different because he can literally talk over the filming, because it's silent, but like no one's hearing what the instructions he's given, but he's like literally explaining what everyone is seeing and stuff as they're filming the scene. And I think that's so different from how we see movie making now. Obviously things have changed, the technology has changed, but it's so interesting. And like the fucking stuff that he says sometimes as he's giving direction. I mean, the movie starts out where he's like, pussy, nice pussy. Like that's the first thing he fucking says. He's like looking at a cat in a bed or something. Yeah.
I was
good.
I laughed when the movie starts and the first thing you hear him say is that, and I was like, oh, Pete and I, we're back, baby. Let's go.
Yup. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's such an absurd movie, and I love it because like some horrible things happen in it, but it's so like kind of tongue in cheek and campy, But there are these like great lines, like you said, and we should also talk about Willem Dafoe and some of the lines of dialogue that he says too, because he talks about like what was the saddest part of the Dracula book, and he talks about how like Dracula didn't have any servants. Then when Jonathan Harker comes to visit him, he has to pretend like he's a man. And this is great. I mean, first of all, Willem Dafoe's performance is great, but then just that like line of dialogue is such an interesting line of dialogue to try to perceive how a vampire would interpret the book of Dracula.
That's really interesting. And like one of our favorite things to cover on this show was Interview with a Vampire,
Right.
the show on AMC. And I kind of thought about that while that scene was happening, and how Lestat interprets, Louis's book, and how other vampires interpret the book, and how, one vampire's perspective of an entire history of the vampires, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I liked, you would think that like Orlok would be, or Max Shrek, would be upset, as an actual vampire would be upset that, oh, he dies at the end. And he's like, no, it's that I wasn't rich enough, and I wasn't respected enough, and nobody, I had to hide that I was an immortal being for this idiot, Jonathan Harker. You know,
Yeah.
um, I also there's just like the actual story of Nosferatu is just it's really crazy because the lawsuit that Stoker's wife filed, the judge deemed that every copy of the film of Nosferatu should be destroyed. So it's even a miracle that we're 100 and almost 3 years now from that original movie,
Right.
and that we can actually still watch it and see parts of it. And uh, like, think about, like, you can make an argument that there are very few films ever to have been more important to the industry of film than Murnau's original. I mean, it basically, that movie inspired the Universal movies. Dracula is the first of the Universal movies. It basically launches an entire genre of film. And think about it, here we are again 102 and a half years later, and we're the most anticipated horror film of the year is Nosferatu.
Nosferatu. Yes. I was going to ask you, in the 101 Scariest Horror Movie Moments on Shudder, was the original Nosferatu on there? Do you remember?
I don't. I don't know. I used to have the list written out of all the.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm not sure, but I think like that first, either the first time you see him when the doors open, or the first time that, like, when he rises up on the ship, that classic scene which they show in the movie with
Right.
like him
Right.
basically being like cranked up with like a board behind him.
Right.
Uh, you know, there's the moment of him on the ship where he's just creeping across, and that whole scene in Shadow of the Vampire where he I won't sail, and they have to like build a replica ship in front of his like decrepit castle. I thought
Right.
was fantastic.
Absolutely.
And
It-
meanwhile, like the cameraman is dying, and Murnau doesn't care. He's just like, God, just get me another cameraman.
right. Yeah, it's so absurd, and it's so funny too because they have stuff that takes place that's not being filmed, where they'll show like his shadow on the wall and his creepy long nails and stuff, but then it'll be humorous. Like there's two parts that are really funny. There's one, and I think they show this in the trailer too, where he's going to get to Greta, and then like she screams or something, and you just kind of see his shadow, and then when she screams, his shadow like abruptly turns and runs away. It's so like funny and cartoonish. And then there's also when he discovers the system that makes that door open up to let the sunlight in, and like
Yeah.
you know the door opens and the sunlight's coming in, he just like real awkwardly runs away from it. Just like the physical comedy in that's so funny. But I mean, so much of just this movie in itself is just like Willem Dafoe's movements and his responses to things, his little faces he makes when John Malkovich says stuff. He does some stuff with his long, creepy ass fingernails where he like kind of flicks them together and they make this like sort of blade noise. I love all that stuff in this.
Oh, it's a full body performance,
Yeah,
100%. Like, it's obviously
yeah,
he's shrouded in makeup. Obviously, he's in the disguise of Count Orlok. But then it's, yeah, all those little, just like his eyes, the way he moves his mouth,
yeah,
the fingers.
yeah.
It's a full body. I mean, you make an argument, like, I don't know who won the Oscar that year over him. I thought I looked it up the other day, and
Oh, just to interrupt, I'll tell you that Mick Blizz is saying that Danny is number one.
oh,
So
thank you. Oh, I know who that is. I think that's Mike. What's up, Mike?
yeah. You're saying somebody else beat Willem Dafoe for best supporting actor?
Yeah.
Let's look that shit up. He said a little heart too. There you go. So it's Mike. Okay, very nice. So what else do you want to say about this movie? Is there anything else you want to say about the supporting cast?
I mean, I thought I think this is effectively I think it's a well casted movie. But I do think that at the end of the day, it comes down to the two lead performances. I said in my short review that it might be a case where Defoe's performance is so good that it elevates what might have been a mediocre movie to a good movie.
That's a very
Where
good point.
I don't know if I want to say this on the air
Uh-oh.
out because, well, no, because that's kind of how I always looked at. I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying this. That's kind of how I always looked at The Dark Knight, where
Oh.
where the
I thought
movie
you were going to
was
say like Showgirls or something and be like,
no,
oh, I
no,
can't
no,
talk
no,
about that. And you
no,
say
just
The Dark
I
Knight.
because I think The Dark Knight is overrated in the sense that people think it's like the greatest movie of all time. And I don't. I think it's an excellent movie. I think it's a 9 out of 10. I'm not besmirching the name of The Dark Knight, but I think that Heath Ledger's Joker was so good that it covers up a lot of what I think are some obvious mistakes in that movie. And it's just Heath Ledger's so fucking good that you just don't care about those mistakes. And you walk out of the movie going, oh my God, he was amazing. And like Willem Dafoe in this movie, he was nominated. He did win, obviously posthumously, but he won
Yeah.
the Oscar, Heath Ledger, for Best Supporting Actor for that movie. I think in Shadow of the Vampire, you have a movie that is not as good as The Dark Knight. I think it's a good movie, but I think we kind of look at it as a very good movie in part because Defoe's performance elevates the entire movie.
Yeah. I think you're on the money there. I think you're on the money. And I think it just sort of when it came out, it was a big deal because of the subject matter. Like you said very early in this recording that we see movies like this now where they're kind of like retelling an old story, but like with a different spin. This is sort of uncommon for that time. I also looked up who won Best Supporting Actor. It was Michael Caine of all people, and it was for The Cider House Rules. So
No, what? No, that wasn't that year, was it?
I
I
looked up
think Mike.
2000.
Oh no, 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 that was the year before because that was the look up the 2001 Oscars
All right, I'll look it
because
up.
Michael Caine Cider House Rules was a 1999 movie. That was another. He should not have won that year. That was a terrible. That
All
was
right,
like a
hold on.
year filled with amazing Best Supporting
Oh,
Actor nominations.
Benicio del Toro, and he won
Traffic.
for Traffic. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I would have given it to Defoe, but Benicio del Toro was great. Traffic's a great movie, so I can't even be too upset.
Randomly, and for our viewers, and for you too as well, Danny, I love Benicio del Toro, and I'm actually watching a show with him right now. It's on Netflix. It's called Escape from Dannemora. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's him, and then who played the fucking Riddler? Who's got that puffy face recently? You know,
Oh,
he's in
oh,
Little Miss
Dano.
Sunshine. Paul Dano,
Dano.
yeah. It's him, Paul Dano, and then what the fuck? The guy who plays Dewey, his sister.
Arquette. Rosanna
Yeah,
Arquette.
Patricia Arquette. Thank you.
Oh,
See, that's
Patricia
why I'm
Arquette.
glad if we're a duo over here, man. You can help me with all this. Yeah, it's basically the three of them, and they're at a prison. She's a worker at the prison, and the other two are prisoners, and they're trying to escape from it. It's really, really good. I watched the first two fucking episodes on Netflix. You should check it out. That has nothing to
Benicio
do
del
with
Toro.
yeah.
Benicio del Toro is another actor that I could totally see being like a creepy ass vampire.
Oh, absolutely. Armand? He could just be Armand.
Yeah, like if they would have went in that direction for Armand for the show, if they wanted, if they were remaking the movie and they wanted like to replace Antonio Banderas, they could have like he would have fit perfectly. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sorry for taking us on that little tangent. As you can see, me and Danny like vampires a lot. We talk about Interview with the Vampire a lot.
we do. It's
Yeah.
been fun going back and rewatching some of these like Dracula movies, vampire classics, and doing some short reviews. Like I was watching Fright Night the other night. Charlotte walked in and just was like, "Oh, Fright Night!" And, like sat down and watched like the last 15 minutes of it with me. And, like it's a tried and true subgenre of horror that it's very hard to do a bad vampire movie. Like even the bad ones, there's always something, right? Like I was even like when you were like when you were like, hey, I'm back, let's do a vampire movie, and I was like, want to do Dracula 2000? And you were like, and then you were like, let's do Shadow of the Vampire. And I was like, that's a much better idea. That's actually a much better choice. It fits Nosferatu. It fits the theme much better. And now, like, part of me is like, I'm going to go probably, I'm sure I'm going to have to end up paying $3 to watch Dracula 2000 again with Gerard Butler. But
yes.
like
What
that
a,
movie, it wasn't great, but I have like fond memories of seeing that in the theater, and I remember liking the twist that he's like descendant from Judas in that movie.
right, right. Isn't like that singer, what was her name? Vitamin C? Isn't she in it?
Oh, I don't know. You're asking me about music. I went
She
to a
had that
Broadway.
song when we graduated. You know, it's like as we go on for whatever. You know that fucking song when we graduated?
I don't know. Everything I remember about graduation is the Green Day song.
Oh,
Uh,
Time of Your Life.
yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah,
it was Pomp and Circumstance, and then Green Day. That was it.
yes. Yeah, yeah. Well, we got the
But
tangents go
do you
left.
do
Go ahead.
you have your tickets for Nosferatu yet?
Not yet. I'm trying to go with Sherry. It's just a matter of setting up like the date night to go do that.
No worries. So I have my ticket. It's really funny. I just saw a meme of or a GIF of the Grinch walking into a movie theater, and it was like me on Christmas leaving my family behind to go see Nosferatu, and I was like, oh my god, because
Hell yeah.
I have a ticket for tomorrow night, Christmas Eve at 9:30. I'm going to go to
Nice.
the RPX theater at my local Regal. I figure Athena is usually asleep very early. We're having Christmas Eve. We're going to go to my mother's apartment and actually do a early Hanukkah where we give each other our gifts. Then
Sure.
we'll watch Christmas movies during the day, and then she'll probably be asleep by 8:30 at the latest, and then I'll sneak out to go see Nosferatu. So I will be at this time on Christmas Day, I will have seen the new film, and I'm very excited for it.
Nice. Santa Claus is going to be coming to town, and Danny's going to be watching Johnny Depp's daughter get molested by a vampire.
Yeah, I guess so. Although
I'm
I
actually.
do I love the cast though. I love Nicholas Holt.
Oh yeah.
I obviously Willem Dafoe. I and Skarsgård at this point. It's just like I feel like Bill Skarsgård as a character who is forced to wear a ton of makeup is almost becoming like Jared Leto being cast in a movie, and you're like, oh, it's him again. Okay,
Right. Right.
like
Right.
except Skarsgård's always great. Like he's always great.
Right.
Like he's great as Pennywise. He's gonna be awesome in this. And I freaking love that the trailers have not shown him at all. Like
Yep.
kudos to them for not giving it away, because that's what I'm most excited for is that first shot of what the new Count Orlok is going to look like in this movie. And look, Eggers is, he's 3 for 3 with me. It was Jesus Christ, my cat's going crazy. The Witch, The Lighthouse, The Night. What's the Viking
Northman.
Northman. Northman. He's 3 for 3. I can't wait to see this. I'm just really excited. And then, like, Chris and I, we've been joking with Chris that it's like, as soon as this movie comes out, as soon as I see this, I can say, okay, good. Now I can work on my top 10 of 2024 list and whittle my list down.
Yep. Yeah. That was one of the things when I considered us like not having the channel anymore, and I'm really glad that you stuck with it. Was I was like, oh, I really love making that top 10 list of the year, like just kind of saying what's my favorite horror movies. And I have a lot of movies to watch until then, including Nosferatu too. But it sounds like for you and me, our next thing is we're going to do a review of Nosferatu 2024. And then what's on the channel right now, Danny, for people to check out? You already kind of mentioned it.
Basically, I just a bunch of shorts. Just a few short reviews of vampire movies, Dracula movies, Fright Night, Nosferatu the Vampire from 1979, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Shadow of the Vampire. And Charlotte and I were talking about doing a review of Death Becomes Her because we saw the musical yesterday. We watched the movie and then we saw the musical. We took my mom for the holidays yesterday. So we were going to do a review of Death Becomes Her because that's definitely in the horror genre. It's a horror comedy.
Absolutely,
so,
yeah.
You can look forward to that. We're both, Charlotte and I are both off for this week, and you are too. So happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah to everybody, and to you and your family.
Yeah, you as well, man. And we are happy to have you guys back with us. And we will see you guys probably in 2025.